Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, the race for a COVID-19 vaccine is on, with some potential candidates coming from China. President Rodrigo Duterte says Filipinos will be given priority when China's coronavirus vaccine is developed. Also, China welcomes the Philippines' decision to pull out from military exercises in the South China Sea. And with the country becoming Southeast Asia's hotspot for the most number of COVID-19 cases, what strategies can the Philippines adopt from China? Live and exclusive, Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. The Philippines is now the epicenter of COVID-19 cases in Southeast Asia. That means the country has logged the most number of coronavirus infections in the region. As of Thursday, the national tally stands at over 119,000, about 700 cases more than Indonesia. The Science and Technology Department says a COVID-19 vaccine may not be available until the middle of 2021. China is one of the countries developing a vaccine for the disease, and it has promised to prioritize the Philippines once the vaccine is available. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. Ambassador, thank you for your time and welcome to the source.
Good morning, Pinky. Thank you for having me with you today.
Ambassador, the Philippines surpassed the number of COVID-19 cases in China. China is at about 85,000. The Philippines recorded 119,000 cases as of yesterday. What is your assessment of the Philippines' strategy in fighting COVID-19?
Yes, the government of Philippines has taken rigorous measures in combating COVID-19. I think you have joined a lot of experiences from other countries to formulate your measures to battle the COVID-19, including your quarantine, community quarantine, and some other measures. And according to the assessment of a Chinese medical team who visited your country, they feel that your measures are reasonable, comprehensive, and vigorous. And we believe, facing the challenge of COVID-19 and with the joint efforts of the people across this country, you will be able to win over this fight, this battle at an early date.
What kind of measure or strategy did China employ that you suggest or that you think the Philippines can actually implement?
Yes, we have taken quite a lot of similar measures in fighting the COVID-19. I think that's what is important is to, is the policy of community quarantine. You have to make sure all confirmed cases, no matter they are those patients with heavy symptom, light symptom, or asthmatic symptoms, will be, that's quarantine in separate places. So a vigorous quarantine measure are very important. Second is that the protection of medical professionals. So you need to take measures to, separate those medical professionals from patients in hospitals in different areas so that they will be well protected. The protection of medical professionals are very important since they are so crucial in the fight against COVID-19. And of course, the tracing of the patients are also very important. You have to take every effort to trace those who have symptoms, even those who are asymmetric symptom patients.
China has actually been participating in helping the Philippines. You already talked about that a while ago, Ambassador. The medical experts that were sent here in the country, sending over medical supplies as well. But seeing where the Philippines is right now at 119,000 cases, the highest in Southeast Asia, is China sending additional help or assistance to the Philippines?
Yes, I think that we have been doing our every efforts to help the Philippines after the outbreak of the COVID-19 in the Philippines. In return, to reciprocate what you have done to help China earlier this year. And we have sent a medical team to assist your country in fighting the COVID-19. They share their experiences without reservation, since we believe that China has already paid heavy cost in the fight against the COVID-19 earlier this year, and we don't want our friends in the Philippines to pay the same cost. So they try to share the experience with you. And apart from that, China has sent 3 batches of medical supplies to your country. That's including about 1.8 million PPEs and 250,000 test kits from China. And the Chinese companies and individuals have also responded very positively to the calls of the government to assist the country. So far, they have donated almost 10 million PPEs to various levels of governments and also medical institutions. And of course, we also try to guarantee that kind of sufficient supplies of medical medical goods and also other PPEs to this country to prioritize that supply to this market. And at the same time, we as very special measures, we have granted special permit to flights and ships traveling to and from China to carry back to airlift those medical supplies. So the next, in next stage, we know that you are facing a severe challenge in terms of fighting the COVID-19. So we in the first place, we will continue to supply medical, equipment. And next week, as part of the 130 ventilators aided by the Chinese government, another 50 ventilators are arriving in this country. And we are also preparing to aid some kind of high flow nasal oxygen equipment to your country to help those patients with heavy symptoms. And at the same time, we are sharing our experience in that coordinating the resumption of work and at the same time, the control and prevention of COVID-19. And we are also negotiating or consulting with your department concerned on establishing some kind of fast lane to enable the essential personnel changes between our two countries, and also to establish some kind of green lane for logistics in order to ensure the trade and also the supply of medical goods to your country. And of course, at the same time, we try to revitalize all projects of cooperation in the Philippines so that they can contribute to your efforts to restart your economy.
President Rodrigo Duterte, in his State of the Nation address, talked about a vaccine, and he said that hopefully, by God's grace, this will be available by December. He said he spoke to Chinese President Xi Jinping about this. I saw at least 3 vaccines on stage 3 of the trials. Ambassador, when do you estimate these to be approved?
Yes, China is one of the leading developers of candidate vaccines since the early this year. And now there are altogether 165 candidate vaccines recorded by the World Health Organization. And out of the 165, 6 candidate vaccines have entered the final stage of clinical trial. That's the final trial of the vaccine, where after that they could be put into operation. And out of the 6 candidate vaccines which have entered the final stage, 4 are developed by Chinese manufacturers. So far as I know, that all the clinical trial are, doing quite well with very positive results. With there are little, that's like a negative reaction. So we are quite pessimistic that the vaccines will be developed in the near future after the 3rd phase clinical trial. And as you said rightly just now, that our president, during his telephone conversation with President Duterte, he reassured that once we developed the vaccines, we will make it as global public goods and make it affordable and accessible to all countries in the world, especially for developing countries and our neighbors. And Philippines, as a close neighbor and friendly neighbor of China, we will consider Philippines the priority once we successfully developed our vaccines. And for your information, that's several Chinese leading vaccine developers have been engaging your governments and institutions concerned for vaccine cooperation. And 2 of them are very prominent vaccine developers. One of them is China National Biotech Group, and another one is Sinovac, who have conducted their 3rd phase trial in either UAE and Brazil, and since June of this year. So I think the 3rd phase trial is going on quite smoothly. We look forward to an early, success of those vaccines.
But Ambassador, are you confident that this development of the vaccine will be done before the end of this year?
Yes, I'm not a scientist. It's quite difficult for me to predict, but according to the assessment of some scientists, it is likely that the vaccine could be developed before the end of this year or early next year.
And before we go on a break, Ambassador, I wanted to ask you this because you mentioned, yes, that the Philippines will be a priority once this vaccine has been approved. Does this mean that the Philippines is first on the list in case China is successful in developing the vaccine?
Yes, as I said, we will be giving the priority to the Philippines for its needs for vaccines. And now what is important is that we need to engage each other for the use of vaccine in the near future. I'm happy to share with you that your government institutions are engaging our companies very closely. I hope that their engagement will go well, so that the vaccines, once is developed successfully, they could be put in use in Philippines as one of the first countries who enjoy the vaccines.
First. All right. Our conversation with Ambassador Huang will resume after the break. Later, we talk about the South China Sea as the Chinese government calls for the resumption of talks for a code of conduct with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. China welcomed the decision of President Duterte to ban the Philippines from joining naval exercises with other countries in the South China Sea. How does China view this particular decision by President Duterte?
Yes, since the new administration took office 4 years ago, our two leaders have agreed on how to handle differences properly. That is to shelve the differences, put aside the differences, and seeking cooperation. At the same time, we work together very closely to maintain the peace and stability in the South China Sea. So we welcome any positive efforts and positive moves by the government of the Philippines to promote peace and stability in the South China Sea.
Foreign Affairs Secretary Lok Sin made it clear, though, Ambassador, that he said what is ours under the arbitral award, and no one can tell us differently. Could you react to that, please?
Obviously, we have different views and different positions in the South China Sea. And you know that our leaders are wiser to agree to disagree. So I think that's we need to take, the guidance from our leaders to engage each other constructively, to manage the differences, and to seek, that's resolution through consultations, bilateral consultations, and negotiations. And we talked about the so-called arbitral ruling. Obviously, China has consistent and clear positions about this ruling. And we have different views. And as I said, our leaders have agreed to shelve the differences. But at the same time, we can, that's remain our position as well. That's regarding the so-called arbitral ruling. Obviously, if we look at the arbitral ruling literally, what is arbitration? Arbitration is something agreed by both parties directly concerns. Only by doing so, it could be called arbitration. And the ruling itself, it is a ruling without the agreement from the other sides. So we might not call it arbitral ruling. It is just ruling itself. It means the word of arbitration. So as I said, that's it's very normal for two neighbors to have differences, and we should not allow the differences to become disputes, and we should not allow the disputes to become conflicts. China and Philippines are both.
Let me just do a follow-up on that, Ambassador. I hope you don't mind, because the Secretary Lok Sin said, with regards to that banning exercises, military exercises in the South China Sea, he said that, I quote, "We're sitting out this one. We don't know if we will the next one." How will China view the possibility of possibly at another time the Philippines joining military exercises with other navies in the South China Sea? What I want to find out is, if the Philippines does that, would this automatically cause tension between the Philippines and China?
China and the Philippines are both literal countries of the South China Sea. And as regional countries, we need to work very closely to promote and maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. There is one document called DOC, the Code of the the
Code of
DOC
conduct.
in China Sea. According to the DOC, there was one article
Okay.
speculating that all parties concerned should exercise restraint so that not to complicate the situation in South China Sea. And all member states of the DOC should work together to maintain
Mm.
peace and stability in the South China Sea. So I think that all countries have the obligation to implement the spirit and letter of the DOC so that we can maintain the common home of all littoral countries in this region.
Secretary of State Michael Pompeo spoke to Philippine Secretary Locsin, and Secretary Pompeo and Secretary Locsin discussed the recent changes in U.S. policy on maritime claims in the South China Sea, the U.S. support for Southeastern coastal states upholding their sovereign rights consistent with international law, and opportunities for maritime cooperation. I wanted to ask you, Ambassador, what is your reaction to the United States supporting Southeast Asian countries in upholding sovereign rights?
When we talk about the United States, as outsiders, we expect outsiders to respect the efforts of the regional countries in maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea. But on the contrary, it's a regret that we have seen the US meddling vigorously in the South China Sea issue. First, the US has broken its promise to take sides and to give up his position, his neutral position in the South China Sea. Second, the US has been meddling or intervening in the affairs of the South China Sea by showing its muscles. You might not be aware that in the first half of this year, the US has come up with more than 200 sorties of military aircrafts to this region, not mentioning its carriers and
Hmm.
warships. So who is provoking the situation in the South China Sea is very clear. And number three, China and ASEAN countries, altogether 11 parties, are negotiating on a very important document called COC, the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea. But contrary to what it is at that's a desire, the U.S. is trying to that's make trouble to this process after consultation and negotiation. We expect all external players to respect the efforts by regional countries to promote peace and stability in the South China Sea. As I said earlier, South China Sea is the common home for littoral countries in this region, and China and Philippines are like family members. So it's normal for family members to have differences. But if an outsider, if a neighbor comes to assist us, that's fine. They can promote peace, they can promote dialogue and negotiation. But if they come to say that please fight with each other, then we have to question their purpose. Do they want the peace in this region, or they want to make South China Sea as a political game for their geopolitical purpose?
Ambassador Wang, we need to go on a very short break. But before that, because you talked about the code of conduct, I wanted to ask you just, I hope you can give me a quick answer. How soon can we see the final version of this code? Because I know that China is calling on the resumption of the talks on the code of conduct in the South China Sea.
To share with you personally, I was the head of the joint working group a few years back for the consultation of the code of conduct. So at the time, people were not so optimistic about the development of the framework of the COC. but we concluded the framework of the COC within half a year. So that has proven the willingness, political willingness, and capability of the regional countries to work out a good COC, which will regulate the behavior of countries in this region. And of course, we expect, as you know, that's expected by other regional countries, the code of conduct could be completed by the end of 2021. So that the code of conduct will play a very constructive role in regulating the behavior of regional countries and external countries, and so that it could play a positive role in maintaining peace and stability in this region.
All right, we need to go on a very short break. We will be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Ambassador Huang Xilian. Ambassador, in June 2019, that's over a year and 2 months ago, a Filipino fishing vessel, the Gemver, sank in Recto Bank after it was hit by a Chinese vessel. It was reported, from last I saw, that your government is studying this case. I have two questions on this, Ambassador. First, what has been the result of the study? And number two, will the 22 fishermen receive compensation?
Yes, thank you for your question. You know, it was a very tragic accident for the coalition of fishing boats between our two countries. And we also felt very sad about the result of the coalition. And both sides have taken a constructive approach to handle this accident. And the Association of Fishermen in China has promised to compensate for the loss of the Philippine fishermen. And so far, we have been engaging your government and your authorities concerned to proceed this process. And we hope that this issue could be solved at an early date. We are still waiting for the feedback and the proposal from the side with regard to the compensation. And we also care about the welfare of the families of those fishermen.
But isn't 1 year and 2 months taking, isn't that such a long time, Ambassador?
Yes. As I said earlier, the Chinese Fishermen Association has proposed to compensate, and they are still waiting for the counter proposal from the side with regard how to compensate your fishermen. I think that they are still waiting. We hope we can get the feedback as soon as possible so that we can work out something for the benefit and for the welfare of those missing fishermen.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador Huang Xilian. For now, we're going to say goodbye on television. We will continue our discussion on our Facebook Live. So in the meantime, again, I'd like to thank Ambassador Huang, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.